All right, so up to now, I've gone through the various elements of negotiation, whether the right things to do, whether not the right things to do. What I want to do now is to give you a set of recommendations which are really advice from the experts. These are the researchers, the executives who have done a lot of negotiations, and I've put together a short summary of the key messages that they have for you. So let's start. The first one, give yourself room for concessions. Keep in mind that negotiation is a process. It takes a series of back and forth. It takes a series of offers and counter offers. So make sure you have your target clearly in mind. Whatever that target is, it is a price that you want to buy or sell, whatever. And then organize your process of concessions from the opening bid all the way to your target. Don't give it all away the first time. And the second suggestion is try to get the other party to start revealing their needs and goals. Again, that's very clear. The more you understand their interests, their needs, their goals, the easier it is for you to try to connect to what's of importance to them. Make the other party work hard for every concession you make. This is where real negotiation takes place. Of course, there is give and take, but it has to be made clear through your actions that every concession on your side requires a reciprocation on the other side. And both parties to the negotiation understand that. So again, related to that, make sure that every concession, the progression of concessions that you make are associated with some level of concession on something that's of importance to you from the other side. And executives who have done a lot of negotiations have made the point that you really need to time and schedule your concessions and make it slow. Don't, if you are quick in giving concessions, it sends the message that you are not really serious about your starting position anyway. So you lose some level of credibility. And this actually is important, particularly in cross-cultural negotiations, as you will see in the next session. And to be a strong negotiator, you have to be willing to say no at some point. The ability to say no and the willingness to say no is a big source of power in negotiations. Very important. If you are engaged in a serious negotiation with another party, a manager, a corporation, organization, etc., it's important to keep a record of your concessions for two reasons. One, it reminds you and the other side of the series of concessions that you have made. So make sure they don't forget and you don't forget. But the other reason is discipline. It gives you discipline. By knowing what you have done and having a record of the concessions you have made, it's easier for you to keep your discipline. So there you have it. This is what experts, both researchers and practitioners, have suggested. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the major mistakes that are made typically in negotiations. One mistake is not being able or willing to put yourself in the other shoes. I've made that very clear so far, how important it is for you to see the world through their eyes, to understand the world through their eyes, to understand their context, to understand their needs, their desires, their issues, you really need to make the effort, both previous to the negotiation and during the negotiation, to increase your knowledge about their realities, their concerns, their constraints, their opportunities in terms of BATNAs. The other thing that I've noticed personally in negotiations between companies, how easy it is for both sides to focus exclusively on price, which is very tangible, obviously very important. But then there's nothing wrong with you with focusing on price and tangible items and goal, as long as you do not ignore intangible. If you're able to get the other side to a price that they're really not very comfortable with, and you get the best value out of it, what are the consequences of that for your long-term relationship? Are you interested in a long-term relationship? Is building a trusting relationship important to you? So those are the other things that you need to think about and make sure you are aware of. The other mistake that people make is really related to number one, which is not understanding the underlying interests of the other side. There is a reason why the other side, the same as you, but why the other side have the position that they have. There's some logic to it, there's some background to it, there's some needs to it. So not trying to understand their underlying interests is a mistake. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy for you to find it out, but that's part of your preparation, and that's part of the series of questions that you're going to ask in the negotiation. And the other mistake is being obsessed with reaching a common agreement. It's absolutely great if you can do it, but sometimes the incentives are different, the needs are different, so sometimes it doesn't work. That's the reality of negotiation. You do your best, you work hard to find common interest, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen every time. And it really takes serious understanding and effort to be able to reach common interest. Finally, the last mistake is not paying attention to your own BATNA and the other side's BATNA. If you negotiate without knowing what's your best alternative outside of this negotiation, you're shooting in the dark. If you have no sense of what are the other opportunities, alternatives for the other side, again, you're shooting in the dark. So the more you have information about your own and the other side, the better your chances. So keep these potential mistakes in mind when you're preparing for a negotiation. The last topic I want to cover very briefly, we'll get to this a little more in the week 8, but I want to talk a little bit about emotions, the role of emotions. You know, negotiations aren't always fully cognitive. People have emotions, they get frustrated, they get tired. Some people actually enjoy engaging in negotiations. Some cultures enjoy engaging in negotiations. Some people and some cultures don't enjoy it. They do it because they have an objective to reach, but it's not something they really enjoy. So here's a few things we know about emotions. There is research showing that people who experience stress and anxiety, they tend to reach suboptimum decisions and agreements. Why? First of all, their first offer tends to be a little weak. They tend to respond more quickly to the other offers and are more likely to want to get out. In other words, because people who find negotiations stressful and anxiety-inducing would love to get out of it as soon as possible. This is an experience they feel, yeah, I got to do it because of my job, but it makes me feel uncomfortable, I don't enjoy it, I feel bad, I feel stressed. So if someone feels that way, that becomes a disadvantage, especially if the other party picks it up. That you want to get out, you want to finish the negotiation very quickly and put an end to this process. So that's where the research is on negative emotions, on anxiety, on stress. Sometimes people get angry, they get upset, they get frustrated. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Now, when we talk about cross-cultural negotiation, we're going to come back to this because in some cultures, showing some level of anger is part of the game. And everybody understands it. But in general, the research that we have shows that when people show anger in negotiations, when they express being angry, upset, etc., it tends to escalate conflict. It makes the other side very uncomfortable unless they know the game. They don't know the game, it gets very hard for the other party to know what to do, how to deal with it. So it can damage the immediate negotiation. It can also damage the probability of building a sustainable and trusting relationship. So generally, it's a safe bet to stay away from anger. I'll give you one example that I was involved with. I was advising an American team that was negotiating with a Middle Eastern team. And a few things were not going very well. And the head of our American team not suddenly, but because of the frustrating comments that were going back and forth, he became agitated. And his face got red, and his body language was very negative. So at that point, we immediately said, let's take a half-hour break. The weather is very nice. Let's go out and walk and enjoy the weather, and we'll come back and continue. In other words, we didn't allow his emotional situation to in any way damage. And he was an experienced negotiator. He knew that it was not a good idea to continue because he was just mad. All right, so that brings us to the end of the week 7. I hope you have found the video instructive and helpful. You have activities to do, and for week 8, our ID verified students have an assignment to do. But all of the students, both audit and ID verified students, have activities to perform for both week 7 and 8. So you will see a series of additional readings and resources that you can take advantage of. And also, there's a video for you to watch as part of your activity. I hope you will enjoy it and you will find it helpful. Thank you.